This meeting's a little different from any other big book meeting. We don't go around the room and individually read. There's only one person that reads. That would be me. But during the reading, there's crosstalk. So we shout out questions or any kind of discussion we might have during this reading. And before we start reading, we don't do a reading in chapter 5 or a reading in chapter 3. We do an overview of the whole 164, so you know exactly why we're reading, what we're reading. Does anybody need a big book? It's a good idea to have a big book in a big book meeting. It took me a little bit to figure out when I first got my first big book, that the big book is in 2 sections. There's stories in the back, and then the first 164, which are the program, okay? Stories, very important, but they change with each edition. We've had 4 different editions of the big book. What we go over in this meeting is the first 164, which are outlined in the contents page in the beginning of the book. So during the beginning, we're going to do an overview, and then we're going to start where we left off last week, which is step 10 and 11 in chapter 6, specifically page 84, okay? Now, like I said, the story is very important, but they change with each edition. We've had 4 different editions. The very beginning, in the preface of the big book, it says, when we start off here, we don't change the 164. There's a strong sentiment against any change being made to it. But we hope when you read this or the stories in the back that you go, I felt like that. I think this might work for me. I might be an alcoholic. In other words, the me too, right? Then we go into the forewords. There's forewords to each of the editions. There's been 4. The foreword to the first edition says this book, the main purpose of this book is to show you precisely how we have recovered. So there's clear-cut directions in the big book. There's suggestions in meetings and through our experience, but there's clear-cut directions in the big book and in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? So, 90 meetings in 90 days, very good suggestion. It's not a direction out of the big book, okay? So when you kind of know the difference and you know what's a direction out of the big book, you kind of have a little bit more connection with the book and the program, that, you know, part of the we of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? In the second edition, the foreword to the second edition, we throw in some history. The third and the fourth edition, the forewords, we talk about how we've grown, how many more groups have become, how many more people have been helped by the program, okay? The big book starts right here at the doctor's opinion. Now, we have 2 founders, Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob. The doctor's opinion is not Dr. Bob, it's Dr. Silkworth. He's the man that helped 40 to 50,000 alcoholics. He's the one that detoxed Bill, right? Let's say at Harbor General, there's that one doctor that sees us when we come in every time, and he looks up and he goes, you again. Sorry, we can't seem to help you. But whatever these men have to say seems to work. And that's the good doctor's opinion. It's Dr. William Silkworth that wrote the doctor's opinion. In there, he talks about the allergy. He talks about the phenomenon of craving, this allergy we have that makes us different. No pill will fix us. No, the doctors, no synthetic knowledge is going to be able to make a pill that's a cure for alcoholism. Okay? But he says, one alcoholic talking to another has depth and weight. And that's what works with us, okay? Right after that, chapter 1 is Bill's story. Just like in a speaker meeting, Bill tells his story. He talks about crossing that line. He talks about trying, self-knowledge availed him nothing, about stealing from his wife's purse, about one more time trying, one more time, and then the message being carried to him and the importance of carrying it to another. And there's a solution. We all kind of chime in and we go, a lot of us felt just like Bill. You might be one of us, that real Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, the real alcoholic. If you are, don't worry about it. Come along for the ride. Then, and more about alcoholism, we read it in the meeting, right? It starts off with, none of us wanted to admit we were real alcoholics. Nobody likes to say they're bodily and mentally different than their fellows. And then, like in a participation meeting, we have 3, different people telling their story, like Jim the salesman, Fred the accountant, the jaywalker. And in there you might find something that makes you go, me too. We've talked about spirituality up until this point, so chapter 4, we agnostics, is all about don't overthink the God thing, okay? If you got a God, good. If you don't worry about it. We're just asking you to understand you seem to have lacked that power to be able to get sober by yourself, right? If we lack that power, there's got to be a power bigger than me, right? And in the beginning of how it works, where we get into the steps, there's a part of it that says, our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic and our personal adventures make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, oh my gosh, I'm an alcoholic. After reading up until this point, I've realized, oh my gosh, I can relate. I'm an alcoholic. B, I lack that power to return me to sanity, right? I lack the power. There's got to be a power bigger than me. No human power has been able to relieve me of my alcoholism, and see that God could and would if he were sought. That's the premise of steps 1 and 2. In the original manuscript, it said, if you're not convinced of these 3 pertinent ideas, please reread the book up until this point or throw it away. But being convinced, you're now at step 3. So the rest of this chapter talks about steps 3 and doing an inventory. The 4 steps. So we've got resentments, fear, and sex that we went over when we did our inventory, right? We went into chapter 6, into action, which is where we're at today. Not only do we write some real truths about ourselves, right? We learned about self-will, our selfishness, self-centeredness, our fear, our insecurities, our I want what I want and I want to get the world to do what I want it to do, right? How to take a breath and go, what you got for me? Help me walk through whatever you put in front of me so I can help another. Help me learn some facts about myself in this inventory process. And then just thinking about it on our own wasn't going to help. We had to tell another. And we found some character defects. We became willing. We had a list that we made when we did our inventory in chapter 5 that included some amends we need to make. We had to amend the things we did wrong, where we hurt people, where our selfishness and our dishonesty or our self-seeking had caused us to harm others, right? And we cleared these things up. They're starting to learn a new freedom. Not just from reading that inventory, but from actually doing the work to clear it up, to make amends to those we've hurt, right? And then we read the promises last week. And that's about where we're at. And I think last week when we ended, we talked about 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, 12. You can do them all the time. And the middle ones are the cleaning up steps. You know, that 4 through 9 is where we kind of clean up the stuff in here. But 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, 12, we can do all the time. Oh my gosh, I'm an alcoholic. I'm not God. Something bigger than me is going to have to work. And 10, 11, 12. Continually take a look at our day. We can do that while we're doing our inventory and while we're doing our steps and while we're learning. We can take a look at, and we're going to learn that tonight, okay? But how do we do those things to keep ourselves spiritually fit so we can continue on this journey, right? Because now we don't have as much fear, insecurity, remorse, that pit that goes all the way around, you know, that just incomprehensible demoralization that nobody else understands but us. We've done the inventory, we've done the work, and now we're starting to feel some freedom. So how do we keep that? And that's what we're going to be looking at tonight. After that, we've got working with others, all about step 12, sponsorship, and then to the family, to the wives, to the employers. This book came out not just for us, but for others, and then A Vision for You sums it all up, where Bill talks about everything and says, you know what, we realize we know only little. Here's our book, don't die. Okay? Any questions? Cool. All right. So, like I said, if there's any questions during the reading, now that I've taken off my glasses and I can't see anybody, just shout things out. But we are going to be at the middle of page 84. We had talked about the fact that there's promises in every step, and we just read the promises of step 9. Right after, they will always materialize if we work for them. This thought brings us to step 10. Which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So that means as we were doing 8 and 9, we were vigorously beginning this new way of life to make sure that we don't cause more wreckage as we're cleaning up the past, right? We have entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. How can I better serve others? How can I better be helpful? This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. So, we don't just do 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, 12 once and stop. We continually do these in order to stay sober, right? So here's one of our directions. Continue to watch for, and I have these circled and highlighted in my book, selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Where did we find selfishness? In step 3 with self-will and riot, right? Me, self, what I want, what I want. If the world only treated me right, if you only knew what I went through, what, right? And then dishonesty, resentment, fear, that all came from our inventory, didn't it? When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. Does it say if these crop up? No. When? Pretty much they will. It's gonna crop up. How many times have we gone through the steps and we're on that pink high cloud, you know, and we've got a chip under our belt. We haven't yet sponsored anybody yet, but we go to meetings, we check in, we do our thing, right? But all of a sudden then we get this lull. I don't know what's wrong. I'm not feeling quite right. I'm starting to get a little annoyed at people. I'm starting to look at people a little differently. The world's starting to not treat me right, right? We know when we're not feeling spiritually fit. When these things crop up, what are we supposed to do? Well, let's see. The direction is we ask God at once to remove them. Not so easy sometimes, huh? So what do? We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. What does that sound like? Sounds like the process we just went through, right? We did an inventory. Solitary self-appraisal didn't do us much good. This wasn't. We had to go to we had to do this with somebody. We had to talk our list out with somebody, right? So I had to go to a sponsor. I had to call my sponsor. Let's see. If I made amends. This doesn't say once at night. It says immediately, during the day, maybe lunchtime, maybe on the way. I had to quickly make amends if I harmed anyone, right? Sounds like the steps we just went through. Then what do? Here's a direction. We resolutedly turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. Those are directions out of the big book. So just like that whole inventory process, I heard an old timer once say that if you keep doing the inventory over and over and over and over and over again, and you're not doing it with somebody else, get off your horse and help someone. Because 10, 11, 12 is going to keep you clean if you keep doing them, but your 12 is where you're going to help somebody else learn how to do this whole inventory process, right? Because right here, 10 is what's telling us how to do. Not just bumping into somebody and going, oh, sorry, made an amends. You know, took care of that. That's not the only thing we do. I got to watch out for my character defects popping up. I got to watch out for my things that I did that I had to write about in my inventory process all the time. And when they crop up, immediately do something about it. Call somebody, talk to somebody about it. Make amends if I harmed anybody. If in the process of my selfishness, my dishonesty, my fear of a new job I'm going to go to, what if I can't do that? My resentment, my insecurity, my resentments. In the process of that, if I trample on your feet in the meantime, then I make amends. A 10th step is not just, oh, made amends. It's about keeping it clean and doing the whole process that we just went through. Okay? Here's a promise, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. Promise, for by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally. Yes, that's a promise. And we will find that this was happening automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. We are not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. Does that mean we're terrified to go near anybody that drinks, or we don't go here, or they? No, well, we don't go hanging out at the dope man's house, right? But we don't avoid going to the family event this weekend with the Christmas spirit, and where some people might drink because we're afraid of it. If we've done the work, if we're spiritually fit, if we've done these steps, right? So part of step 10 and part of the promises is that we are not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. But there is a condition. We're neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is if our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. Now, remember when we started this, in the very beginning, we had talked about that front page that says Alcoholics Anonymous, how many men, thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. And I think somebody brought up the question, are you allowed to say, I'm a recovered alcoholic, or I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a recovering alcoholic? It's really a personal choice. But of course you can say that I have recovered, because many of us have recovered if we've done the work. So by this point in it, we've done all the steps. We've done the inventories. We've cleaned out all this stuff, right? We've learned some facts about ourselves, and we're starting to be free. And we're checking to make sure that we stay in fit spiritual condition. We've cleaned up the wreckage of our past, right? We know what our character defects are if they crop up. And if we remain in that fit spiritual condition, we have recovered. And we're not cocky about it, nor are we afraid of it, as long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. It is easy, though, to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels, is it not? How many, I know I have, start that thing where it's like for a little while I was on a roll. I'm doing the whole meditation in the morning. I'm feeling good. I'm helping. All of a sudden then I get busy with something and I haven't meditated in a while. I haven't done, read through the 10th step. I haven't checked on myself lately, and I start to get a little more irritated on the 405 while driving. And that might trickle into the people I work with, So, it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle, quiet foe. It's waiting for us to just give it a little crack in the door to open. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Everybody's heard that one, right? When you hear people say it, sometimes you go, wait a minute, let me think. I've got to read those words quietly, daily. So, what's a reprieve? Tomorrow I'm going to have to go to jail for that parking ticket, la la la, or whatever, right? And I go and the judge goes, you don't have to go to jail today, but come back tomorrow and check with me. As long as you don't park in any bad spots tonight, whatever. I go, oh, wow, shoo! Avoided that one today, but I'll go back tomorrow, a little scared, a little unsure. What do you think? Am I going to jail today? And he goes, no, I'm going to give you a reprieve today. Check with me tomorrow, right? So with alcoholism, we have this daily reprieve based on, contingent on what? How we behave spiritually if we stay in fit spiritual condition. If I do this stuff in this 10th step, if I continually watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, and when they crop up, I ask God at once to remove it, I discuss it with somebody immediately, and I make amends if I've harmed anyone, right? So what we really have is a daily reprieve. Phew! Contingent on how I maintain that spiritual condition. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. 10-step prayer, some people say that is. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. Now remember when we were back in the 3rd step, we were talking a lot about self-will and God's will and that confusion that comes sometimes with that. Pretty much God's will is going to be whatever's put in front of me sometimes. Kelly's will is how do I get around it? How do I avoid it? How do I get away with it? How do I get you to do it instead of me? Right? How do I get you to think that I didn't do it? Whatever it is, I'm going to go around it. But if I just plow right through it and walk through whatever was put in front of me, I'm walking through God's will today without my fear, my insecurity, my manipulation, my bright mind, and my great ideas. And that I'm walking right through it so that I maybe can then help another walk through it when they have to. So it's how can I best serve thee? How can I go help somebody else, right? Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God-conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. But we must go further, and that means more action. Ooh, ooh. So, by this time, what's happening? Remember in the beginning when I said, when we first start at the steps, before we even look at ourselves and before we even trust anybody to tell our story and all this kind of stuff, sometimes that ice cube melts slowly. Our development of our spiritual side, our healing of our spirit, our learning who our higher power is and our own personal relationship with comes through doing the steps, doing the work, right? And by now, by 11, we're going to have a better understanding of who our own higher power is, what our connection is with God, right? So what is more action? Step 11. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. It works. If we have the proper attitude at work and work at it, it would be easy to be vague on this matter. Yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. Now, I believe that it was brought up here before was that meditation also meant at one point, when this book was written, to reflect on, to review, right? So that's where it didn't really necessarily mean that we all sat there and went, Om, right? But to reflect on. So, when we retire at night, these are directions of the 11th step. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Uh-oh, I got to look at me again. Where were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? We were kind and loving toward all. What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking about what we could do for others? Of what we could pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. So if there is something that we need to make right, and we do this, has anybody drifted into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection and woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and still can't sleep? Oh, yeah. We're good at that. That would diminish our usefulness to another person, right? Maybe write it down. Maybe keep a little note. I'm going to write this down and then deal with it in the morning. I won't forget, and I know God won't. God, you hold on to this during the night so that tomorrow morning I can make this right. You know, just because it's 3 o'clock in the morning does not mean you have to call your sponsor and go, I got an extra quarter at the supermarket and I didn't give it back to the girl and I can't sleep now. All right. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. Now, I just say, help everybody else treat me tomorrow the way I treated them today. And the things that you did will pop right into your mind. Right? Oh, is somebody treating me? Oh, right? Now on awakening, let us think about 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking. That's a direction. Especially asking that it be divorced from, here we go again, this is the stuff that crops up for me, self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. I can wake up with those things. Oh my gosh, I got to go there today and deal with that ticket at the courthouse. Oh my gosh, you know. And we will let it plague us and weigh heavy on us. So before I even get out of my day, you can just start off and go, what you got for me today? That's what, remember I told you, I said I start off in the shower every morning and I go, what you got for me? This is how many, if I count how many drops of water hit me on the head, I can't do it in the shower. I've tried. But every time I remember when I get in the shower, this is how many ways you're working in my life today that I can't even count. Thanks. Let's do this. And somewhere in, if I shower every morning, I kind of have this one little moment where I remember, hey, thanks. Let's do this today. I know you're working in my life even when I can't see you. Right? Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. True. Just because we got sober does not mean that I'm going to face days where I don't go, I don't know what I'm going to do. What do I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? I'm not sure how this is going to turn out, right? Should I take the job? Should I not take the job? What, right? We may be faced with indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought or decision. We relax and take it easy. That's actually a direction out of the big book. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We're often surprised how the right answers come after we've tried this for a while. What used to be, now these are promises of the 11th step, what used to be the hunch or occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it's not probable that we are going to be inspired at all times. So we may not walk around going, ah. Walk in a meeting, have something brilliant to say every single time. No! May not happen. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely on it. How many people have been, after being here a little while and doing this a little bit, have had a story where they've been inspired to go help somebody, a newcomer, or somebody after the meeting that maybe shared something, we go up and we go, me too, I went through that, right? And all of a sudden, then you have to call a friend or somebody else that you've known a long time and go, you would not believe what happened. Oh my gosh, what a coincidence. I was drawn to go talk to this person, and lo and behold, right? It was their first meeting, or they needed this, or, right? It's like that serendipity that happens in these rooms. The more we start practicing thinking of others rather than ourselves. If we plow out of here with, I got to do this, I got to me, I got to better call somebody about what's going on with me, I miss the opportunity to go talk to that person. So what happens is, the more we practice this thought of others, the more inspired we become, right? We find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely on it. We usually conclude the period of meditation. Now, where was our period of meditation? At night, I'm going to go, well, how was my day? Anything gnawing at me inside, right? During the day, all throughout the day, I'm checking it with 10, right? I'm watching out for this stuff in 10. But at night, I'm just going to kind of... And when I wake up, I'm going to go, help me not be selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, afraid. How can I help another today? Let's do this, right? So, I hear a lot of people in meetings say, I read page 86 today, and then some of them don't even remember what page 86 is because they're not doing 86. They're just saying, I read 86 today. If we're not doing these things on a continual basis, we don't have to mention the page necessarily. We just have to keep doing them, watching out for them. Because those things crop up and I see them, I know them, and I feel them, right? So, we usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown through the day what our next step is to be. That we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from, there it is again, self-will, and are careful to make no requests for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it does not work. You can easily see why. Because it puts me back in the head of me, instead of how can I be useful? Out of self, out of self, out of self. How can I help someone else, right? If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives, our friends to join us in morning meditation. Anymore, we can even go to a morning meeting, right? If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. Maybe step 3, this third step prayer. There are many helpful books also. What are some of the helpful books we have? As Bill sees it, Daily Reflections. Yeah. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Make use of what they offer. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. Does that sound like a direction? Oh, you betcha. So when we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful, and we ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves that we are no longer running the show. That's a direction. I got to remember that third step. I'm not running the show. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. That would be, I guess, the prayer for the 11th step. A promise for the 11th step would be, we are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. Remember that page right before the third step prayer? We're constantly trying to get somebody to do what we wanted them to do. When it didn't work, we had to try harder in this direction. I'm trying to get out of something. I'm trying to make you... if the play would just stay put, if everybody would do as I say, everything would be fine, right? Who was it that, somebody here at the club that just recently passed away used to always ask me, what's the shortest paragraph in the big book? Coming up. It works. It really does. Pretty cool. We alcoholics are undisciplined. So we let God discipline us in the simple way that we have just outlined. But this is not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. So in order for me to stop thinking about me and checking my motives and checking to see that I'm on the spiritual plane and I'm spiritually fit, what am I supposed to be doing next? Starts in the third step. Get me out of me. Get me out of the way so I can do whatever you put in front of me so I can what? Put my hand out and what? Help others. So now just because I'm checking my day, making sure I'm not in me, and I'm just making sure at night and when I wake up in the morning that I'm watching out for these things, what am I supposed to do next? What's the next action that's going to be coming up? Because the whole next chapter we're going to go over next week is dedicated to step 12, helping others, working with others. And that's it for tonight. Merry Christmas, everyone. Come back next week when we go over step 12 and chapter 7.